Hello everyone, I'm Davinna Anggita Putri Zulkarnain. I'm an undergraduate student from the English Studies program of Universitas Pajajaran, and today I will be presenting about my research on the separation between Constance Chatterley's identities in Lady Chatterley's Lover. Throughout the novel, it is apparent that Constance constantly tries to separate herself from a certain identity of her own that she is not fond of, which is Lady Chatterley or Clifford Chatterley's wife. Upon further observation, it is found that Constance Chatterley's identity in Lady Chatterley's Lover is actually separated into 6 different identities according to the different ways she is seen by different characters in the book as well as the narrator. The existence of this separation implies the possibility that a woman may have one body, but she bears different values when she embodies each of her different identities according to how society sees and treats her. In the novel, Constance Chatterley's position as a woman um, is is indicated by how she is addressed by different characters. Different people refer to her as 3 different names, which is Constance, Lady Chatterley, and Connie. Those 3 names also consist of several different identities, including her as Constance Reed, Connie, Lady Chatterley, Constance as a woman, and finally Constance as a female. The differences are shown by a narrative mood that is, according to the literary dictionary, function as a device to portray different points of view that the life or action in the story is observed from. The involvement of narrative mood in Lady Chatterley's Lover can be seen through the distinctions between Constance's identities that are made by the narrator, but based on the views of Constance herself and the people around her. Bradley also states that the voice of the narrator is spoken through a character, in this case Constance, even though it actually belongs to someone else, which is the narrator, his or herself. So we will start by talking about the distinctions of Constance's identities. The first distinction will be between Constance Reed and Constance Chatterley. At the beginning of the story, Constance is first called Constance, as seen in the line, "This was more or less Constance Chatterley's position," on page 37. She is referred to as Connie, by whom she is close to, such as her sister Hilda, and the narrator who uses her as a focalization point. Um, and there's a difference between how she is talked about when she's still Constance Reed, her maiden name, and when she has become Constance Chatterley. When she was still Constance Reed, she and her older sister is talked about as women who are not submissive towards men. After marrying Clifford Chatterley, however, she adopted his surname and became Constance Chatterley, resulting in the erasure of her 2 identities as Constance and Connie Reed. So the people around her, as well as the narrator, often refer to as Lady Chatterley instead. One of the examples can be seen when the narrator tells that Clifford was now a baronet, Sir Clifford, and Constance was Lady Chatterley. Constance is not referred to as her given name, unlike Clifford, but by Clifford's family name instead, which she has been taking since marriage. So her position in the marriage is not as a woman, but as Clifford Chatterley's wife. And we will proceed with the distinction between Constance Chatterley and Lady Chatterley. So in the novel, I noticed that Lady Chatterley is the only name with which she doesn't seem to have any personal connection. She treats Lady Chatterley as a something rather than someone. When she talks about her title, she calls it the Lady Chatterley business, which shows how she distances herself from that name. The word business is generally understood as an occupation or the activity of doing commercial work. It is derived from the Old English word business. Uh, its definition as the activity of doing a commercial work and occupation can also be used to explain why Constance treats her title that way. As Clifford's wife, she constantly feels obligated to listen to him telling about what he's writing, even when she doesn't feel like it. And her father also said that Clifford's stories have nothing in it and are not worth paying attention to. She herself even felt that his stories are meaningless. So, so accompanying him in writing stories is like a duty or an obligation for her as a wife. Aside from being a commercial work, business also carries the implications of sexual intercourse, depending on the context. So in this novel, the marriage um, between Constance and Clifford can be the proper context because uh, their relationship is uh, their relationship revolves around whether or not they need to have a sexual intercourse. Um, Besides that, um, the way Constance is treated throughout her marriage with Clifford also implies that she is not only the subject that does the commercial work, but also the commodity herself. So Marx states that a commodity is an object that bears two functions in a transaction, which is to be utilized and to deposit values. In Women on the Market by Irigaray, she states um, that a woman in a patriarchal society is treated the same way as commodities in a capitalist system. So Irigaray incorporates Marx's theory into her argument. A woman's use value, according to her, is their ability to reproduce, while their exchange value is their constitution or body. Spivak also adds that there is another value possessed by a woman, which is a surplus value, and it means the value to create profit. So, for example, in the process of production, the laborer, in this case Constance, is made to work harder than she should in order to give the laborer's works buyer, in this case Clifford, more benefits than Constance herself. So by giving into her marriage and doing her quote unquote job as a wife, Constance creates yet another identity for herself, which is a commodity in her relationship with Clifford. Um, and then next, we will be talking about the distinction between Constance and Connie. So Constance is called Connie when the narrator compares her and Clifford while putting her in the lesser position of the two. This can be seen when the narrator states that Clifford Chatterley was more upper class than Connie on page 43. Even when the narrator is about to talk about what is lacking from Clifford, so putting him in a lesser position than Constance, the narrator still includes Clifford while he was better bred than Connie, adding in another one of Clifford's plus side before finally talking about what he is lacking in. As soon as she is shown to be the one having more value in Clifford's view, the narrator switches to calling her Constance. So as can be seen in this line, therefore the peculiar soft assurance of a girl like Constance Reed fascinated him. When she's referred to as Constance, so when she's referred to as Constance, it is when she has more value in the narrator's view compared to Clifford. But when she's referred to Connie, it is when the narrator talks about her being in a lesser position than Clifford. And the next difference is that this is I think this is one of the most apparent distinction between Constance and Connie's identity. So when she's referred to as Constance, her bravery in facing Mellors is emphasized through her asking the question, "What's the matter? What's the matter? Why is she crying?" in a demanding tone. After that scene, however, the keeper answered her carelessly, and she felt as if he had hit her in the face. And at that moment, her name is immediately switched to Connie. The transition from Constance to Connie happens rather quickly, and it happens just between the changing of her demeanor in front of Mellors. So, which is why I argue that the transition is made on purpose to show the difference between two of her identities, Constance and Connie. The last distinction that will be talked about is the distinction between Constance as a female and Constance as a woman. So the distinction is seen by how she ponders about her strictly business relationship with Mr. Linley, an elderly man who is acquainted with Clifford. So in that scene, she refers to every other woman as a woman, while she talks about herself as a female. She states that she was only really a female to him. It might be a different case if she simply said that she is a female while also referring to other women as female. But it's not the case. Besides making the distinction, she also puts only really, which carries the implication that being a female is somehow lesser than a woman. Despite that, however, Connie thinks that her relationship with Mr. Linley is a better situation instead, because Connie states that she has never had any men who are kind to her as a female. So she said men were very kind to the person she was, but rather cruel to the female. For Mr. Linley, neither Constance Reed nor Lady Chatterley is visible in his eyes. What he sees when he sees Connie is not Constance Reed nor Lady Chatterley, but her female, or in other words, her physical features, such as her loins or her breast. So, according to Connie, Mr. Linley is different than the other men who she has encountered throughout her life, and she thinks that it is a better situation because she wants her identity as a female to be treated as well. Based on the entirety of Constance's contemplation about herself and her body above, it can be inferred that when she refers to female, she means the organs by which she is defined as a human, which, not who, is not a male. Referring Referring to herself as a female implies the reducing of one's identity from a person to simply the person's biological organs. To, to conclude, the way people see Constance Chatterley in the novel heavily depends on what name she is referred to, either by the narrator or by the characters in the novel. The difference between Constance and Connie indicates her position if compared to the men around her, while Constance Reed, Constance Chatterley, and Lady Chatterley are significant in showing her position in society. Constance as a woman and Constance as a female also shows the difference in how she thinks she is seen by men. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. If there's any questions um, or inputs on how to improve my research, because this research is not actually done, I will gladly accept the suggestions and questions to further my study. Thank you very much.